wife and Pat did. That he
I hope so, because it didn't seem like he was retired.
Good evening. I would like to call we're going to do the Craig meeting first. So I'd like to call the Craig meeting to order. The Community Redevelopment Agency will be held on September 25th at 6 p.m. in Council Chambers. If I would get a roll call, please, Debbie.
Member Young?
Here.
Member Long?
Here.
Member O'Neill?
Here.
Member Schoner?
Here.
Chair Hall?
Here.
Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Gillis?
Present. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the March 13th Craig meeting, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. New business, Scott, if you would please, Craig Resolution 18-01.
Craig Resolution number 18-01 by title only for first and only reading. Resolution of the City of South Daytona, Florida Community Redevelopment Agency, Craig, adopting the Redevelopment Trust Fund budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019, prescribing the net resources of revenue in the estimated amount of $1,580,910, setting forth operating expenditures and transfers in the amount of $1,580,910, providing for severance, providing for conflicting resolutions, and providing for an effective date.
Need a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Second. This is the first and only reading on this resolution. It is a public hearing. If anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against Craig Resolution 18-01, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Any discussion?
Scott, just for the record, you said $1,580,000.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 8, I'm sorry. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. With no further business, this will adjourn the Craig meeting. All right, now we'll call the regular meeting of the City of South Daytona City Council to order. We need another roll call, Debbie.
Vice Mayor Young?
Here.
Councilwoman Long?
Here.
Councilwoman O'Neill? Here. Councilman Schoner?
Here.
Mayor Hall?
Here.
Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Gillis?
Present. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mr. Gillis, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we pray? Dear Lord, please keep safe our men and women of our armed forces and all of our public servants, and please give wisdom to this council to do what's right for this city and your kingdom here on earth. Amen.
I need a motion for the approval of the minutes for September the 10th, 2018, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That's the item, the time of the agenda where it's citizens to be heard, comments on any issue or agenda item. This is your opportunity to speak whatever's on your mind about the agenda, what's not on the agenda. As I like to tell Scott, anything in the world. If you'd like to come up and speak, this is your opportunity. Kevin, if you would state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Kevin Pedry, Sergeant with the Police Department here, 1661 Arash Circle. Some good news. We had a charity benefit last Saturday. It was police and firefighters all throughout the county, and actually we had some throughout the state of Georgia also. We battled in a charity soccer match, which we raised just over $6,000 for our charity. With our department here at South Daytona, it was myself that played, Sergeant Craig, Officer Charla, and with the fire department, it was Stephen Avancho. So we did a heck of a job winning the trophy for the police side. There wasn't a doubt in my mind it was going to be blue. So great time. It was over at the Daytona Stadium. It was one heck of a game, full-size professional field and time. We hope to see an even bigger event next year, except in November. It was hot as anything for the whole first half.
Yes.
So appreciate all your support. And we'd like to keep it here for a month, and then it's going to get transferred around to the different cities as well. So if you find a spot for us, we'd be glad to show it up here.
Good job.
I imagine we could, but thank you. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thanks, Ken.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak for or anything on their mind before we start? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. City Manager's report, please.
Nothing to report.
City Attorney's report.
Nothing to report, sir.
You guys are easy tonight.
Yes.
Get marching orders or something?
Exactly.
Don't say nothing while I'm gone, was that it?
That's right.
Ah, okay.
Maybe just a few minutes ago we called.
A few minutes ago? I'm surprised your phone isn't going on. Let's see, old business, resolution 18-26, if you would please, Scott.
Resolution number 18-26, I need to read it in its entirety.
Okay.
A resolution of the City of South Daytona, Florida, adopting a, it's got a yellow tab over there, what does it say?
It does have a yellow.
Final? Final?
Here you go, final.
Final, okay. Final, okay. Final millage rate for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019, and providing for an effective date. Whereas the City of South Daytona is required by Florida Statute Section 200.065, subsection 2, to adopt a final millage rate to be levied. And whereas the statute further requires that the city state the percentage, if any, by which the final millage rate to be levied exceeds the rollback rate as computed by the Office of the Property Appraiser of Volusia County. And whereas the City Council of the City of South Daytona does intend to adopt a final millage rate of 7.75 mils, which is 5.41% more than the current year rollback rate of 7.352 mils. Whereas a public hearing to adopt the final millage rate was held on September 25th, 2018 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as may be heard at South Daytona City Hall, 1672 South Ridgewood Avenue, South Daytona, Florida. Whereas it is necessary for the city to approve and adopt its final millage rate for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council, City of South Daytona, Florida, South Daytona as follows. Section 1, a final millage rate of 7.75 mils is hereby adopted for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019. Section 2, a final millage rate of 7.75 mils is 5.41% more than the rollback rate of 7.3520 and represents a 6.09% increase in property taxes. The remainder of the resolution is just standard resolution language, so it's ready for consideration and adoption.
I need a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak, in the audience would like to speak for or against Resolution 18-26, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mayor?
Yes?
We must do a roll call
Roll
vote.
call. That's correct. Yeah, this resolution and the next resolution, we have to do a roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Young?
Yes.
Councilwoman Long?
Yes.
Councilwoman O'Neill? Yes. Councilman Schoner?
Yes.
Mayor Hall?
Here, yes. Scott, if you would, 18-27, please.
Resolution number 18-27 by title only for final reading. Resolution of the City of South Daytona, Florida, adopting a final budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019, and providing for an effective date.
Need a motion, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any concern there? This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to speak for or against Resolution 18-27, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
Yeah, Mayor, I'll explain this. This is essentially your budget for this next fiscal year. There's a primary focus on maintenance and, more importantly, building up our reserves. We're going to be, I think we're still on path here to have our reserves up to 10.51% by the end of this fiscal year and 11.87 by the end of fiscal year 2018-19, which is what this budget covers. Again, there's some good items on here. We're getting some police cars replaced. Some of our police vehicles are looking pretty worn from being here 15, 20 years. There's also, as you're going to see in the beginning, there's a memo from our finance director. He's asking to do a reorganization. The reason it's before you is because this will require a change to our city's pay plan. We're going to reclassify a utility billing clerk position, pay grade 8, to a customer service team lead, pay grade 17, and it will be an exempt position. The finance director believes that this change and the reorganization will enhance customer service, which we're always looking to do in the city.
How?
And I have Kevin, if you want to stand up and...
Kevin Lewis, Finance Director. The basic idea of this position is it enables us to bring in a specialist who deals in the customer service arena, and it gives us the staffing to be able to deal with new customer service initiatives down the road. It's going to take us a while. It took us a while to get where we are. It'll take us a while to get out of that. But it enables us to bring things, looking at deposits, looking at collection time periods, looking at being able to serve our customers. You'll recall that a number of the things that I've brought to you since I've been here were to automate processes, put in electronic payments, and those kind of things. Those systems are working extremely well to the point that, which is what we want, but that enables us to refocus our staff's efforts into serving the customers rather than just rote payment processing and those kind of things. So when a customer comes in with a legitimate issue, we'll now have the ability and the expertise to be able to focus on their issue, take the time to resolve that issue, and move forward. And as like I said, a lot of things that we will be bringing to you may well involve ordinance changes, deposit requirements, collection contracts, ordinances related to getting collections accomplished, those kind of things. But it gives us the ability to split our focus, one, to billing, to ensure billing is as good as it can be, as well as then increasing our level of customer service.
So we need another supervisor to do this?
This is splitting those responsibilities rather than the UB supervisor would still have overall responsibility for the customer service area, but instead of having day-to-day responsibilities, it's a supervisory responsibility, and you now have a team lead over there handling those functions. So we're getting more out of what we have rather than being restricted based on payment processing and those kind of things.
So team lead, we created that? It's not a supervisor, it's a team lead?
It is a team lead.
So it's a new created position?
Originally in the budget, in mid-year last year, we created a part-time UB clerk. In the original budget proposal that came to the council, we requested to increase that position to a full-time position this year. And since that point in time, as we've gone through reorganization, a lot of the senior experience that we have are people moving to different positions as part of that reorganization. This allows us to get a more experienced person in as well, so that this request in front of you tonight is to take that prior request and make a position full-time and upgrade that position so we can bring in a more experienced person.
And the fiscal impact is?
Negligible, less than $5,000.
For this year? Because we're going from an 8 to a 17, so it's got to have an impact.
There is a impact, but we have some vacancy time periods and benefits that won't be paid because of the new position until they're here.
For this year?
For
this coming year?
The coming year, correct. In addition to which, those automated services that we've implemented will yield, especially as we get further along in that process, will yield some savings that we'll use to offset any cost.
So how many supervisors will we have in that department?
One UB supervisor and then a team lead, and that's it.
But she supervises, or he supervises somebody.
The customer service staff, two reps on a day-to-day basis, but the ultimate supervision lies with the UB supervisor.
And we just hired him?
That person is due to come on board Friday.
And he will supervise how many?
Will be the UB supervisor, who will have 2, plus the meter reading crew.
Okay.
Metering person, sorry.
How many people you have in the whole division in utility billing?
There's
When all is said and done?
5 total.
5 with 1 supervisor and 1 lead.
Correct.
I personally would have preferred to have this conversation when we had our meetings, Kevin, and not in this venue.
I absolutely agree, and that would normally be the process that would have been done. The reorganization is something that we've been, we didn't know exactly when at the time we originally started putting the budget together, we didn't know the assistant finance director was leaving. And then gradually over the summer, as pieces started coming together, it's an opportunity that presented itself to us late in the game. And we didn't know that the musical chairs kind of thing was going to occur. But I absolutely agree, the normal process would have been to have presented that to the council during the budget workshops themselves. But the pieces just really fell into place in the last couple of weeks.
And Mayor, if I might say something, if this board has any reservations, you can adopt the budget and not approve, with or without the pay change plan. I just want to make you aware of that.
Yeah, it just seems like that department is top-heavy.
I had the same concerns, and I had a lengthy discussion with Kevin yesterday. But we're at the last minute here, so it's kind of awkward.
Well, again, the whole intent of that position was not to put the council in an awkward position, but to really change the focus from just a payment processor to a full-blown customer service. So we're providing a much higher level of service to our customers. One of the things that I've worked on over the years is helping customers with leaks and those kind of things, which is really difficult to do if your focus is to pump payments through as quickly as you can get them through. That electronic means gives us the time, and now we need the experience in there as well to be able to help customers. Leaks are a very difficult proposition, and that's just because it's private property. Lots of things can be contributing to it. It's one of the things customers have a difficulty understanding. I don't have a leak. How can I possibly have a leak? I haven't seen anything. So there's lots of pieces that go into it, and that's just one of the examples of things where our intention is to raise that bar. You've heard me talk since I've been here about collections and lien processing and those kind of things. There is so much that needs to be done in order to make that an effective process. Data issues that need to be cleaned up and processes put into place. That's really, we're trying to accomplish a whole lot of things at one time.
Kevin, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Has our mechanized utility building system not freed up some time, staff time?
The bill printing and stuffing?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That has worked extremely well. We use an outside vendor. In fact, it works extremely well in terms of getting bills printed, processed, has freed up a substantial amount of time. The one thing I would caution you, which is that if we were just talking about 5,000 accounts, that's a lot of accounts, but it's not an insurmountable task. When you have balances that are out there, that number multiplies by 3, 4, 5 times in terms of number of accounts. It's an enormous amount of accounts to go through to identify, is it an owner, is it a tenant, set up processes to, once you know on new accounts, to how to deal with those. But for the time being, we have probably 15,000, 20,000 accounts out there that have balances on them that need to be reviewed and identified. Owner, tenant, is it a lien? Has the lien expired? Has it been satisfied? Has it been paid? Is it collections? Those kind of things. As well as before you have an effective lien process, you also have to have parcel numbers involved in your database, which don't exist in our database at all. Those are over 6,000 parcels in our database. So that just the sheer magnitude of that work, it's going to take us a long time to get there. One of the things on deposits that you likely will hear from us. We'll be reviewing to see our deposit levels. If we get to a point, or when we get to a point where our lien process is working effectively, you will likely hear back from me that we don't need to collect a deposit from owners because we have an effective lien process at that point in time. The lien will take care of itself. Then we can focus those deposits on tenants. That immediately will, new owners coming in, will be a benefit to them, and they should leave the building happy instead of upset that they had to place a deposit. Those kind of things are the things I'm talking about, that this will give us the ability to get those systems in place and start making those customer service enhancements.
So you're saying 15, 20,000 accounts with a balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Delinquent balance?
Yes,
And this
ma'am.
has not been an issue, like a serious issue?
There is a large balance of accounts out there. In terms of dollar values, these are typically tenant or owner balances that have been closed. Could be last year, could be the year before, could be 10 years ago. I think there's balances out there that go back clear to 1999. Now, are we ever going to collect a balance from somebody from 1999?
No.
More than likely not. But those accounts still have to be reviewed and written off or done whatever needs to be done. The financial statements already reflect those. There's an allowance for bad debt, so those are already picked up in that allowance. So we're not necessarily talking that, oh my gosh, you're going to have a $500,000 write-off. There will be some write-offs that aren't necessarily reflected in that balance, but the vast majority of it is already reflected in the financial statements.
I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole here, but what is the general practice in this industry for writing off bad debt like that? So you told me we got accounts that are 19 years old.
Yeah, there's certainly at some point in time there needs to be a decision to write it off.
Yeah.
Especially for businesses, there's not much value or benefit to keeping old balances. If the business went out of business, they're gone. You're not going to see a penny. Residential, there's much more of a resistance to write off a lot of those balances because people come and go. So customer Steve may have been here in 2003, moves to California, moves back here in 2010, and then you can say, fine, we'll set up a new account, but pay off the old one first. That is another one of those policy things that we will definitely need to bring to the council to make recommendations, and you give us a policy on what you want us to do with those balances.
I figure 7 to 10 years. So there's got to be some general practice within the industry.
Liens are typically looked at as a 7-year period,
Okay.
so it's not unusual to do the same thing with collections.
Anyone else?
So let me ask this, Les, what you said, what are our options here as a council? We can approve the budget minus that?
That's correct. I'm hearing things, so they have reservations, and it's awkward last minute, but you can approve the resolution with or without the pay plan change.
And then if we, just saying, if we went down that path, then that could be readjusted at a mid-year? That would
That's
be the next
correct.
time that
That's
they bite at
correct.
that apple.
Yes.
So either approve now or disapprove or approve.
Yeah, preferably be something during a budget cycle.
Correct, that's, yeah.
Something else?
Yeah, these thousands of accounts that are dated accounts. You said something like 20,000 accounts. If you eliminated 10 years of those, how many do you think would be left?
It's really hard to know from, I haven't looked at it on a year-by-year basis. Typically, you would think the older ones are probably have higher balances, or more accounts that have balances. As you've made changes in the past to deposit amounts, then some of those accounts that could have had a balance if the deposit wasn't increased will have dropped off. But I would be hesitant to tell you that if you took 10 out of 20 years that you're going to cut it in half. I just don't know that from that perspective. Ideally, we would get to the place where our policies and procedures are in place and our billing is in place procedurally to where you minimize those balances and you limit the numbers of new accounts that are going to collections as well as the dollar value of those accounts. May take some changes in the deposit amounts. It certainly will take some changes in how quickly we respond and get collections up and running. That's going to take, like I said, a lot of work to identify. None of our customers, our 5,000 active accounts, none of those currently identify is it an owner and a tenant. So every time an account closes and the bill doesn't get paid, it's got to be researched to identify, was this an owner or a tenant? If it was an owner, we can file a lien. If it was a tenant, we can only send it to collections. And currently, we don't have a process or even a contract for a collections agency in place. Collection agency isn't the end-all, be-all. The end results from a collection company is reasonably small, but what's more important is anything is the ability to send it to collections. That the mere threat of an item going to collections frequently has a bigger impact than the actual collections effort from a collections company itself.
Explain to me, if you would come please, how this position is going to benefit.
This position brings in a higher level of expertise, someone who has dealt with collections prior, someone who has dealt with actual lien filings prior, someone who can focus their efforts on the customer service side as well as the liens and collections process. It gives us ability to jumpstart that entire collections process and get it moving. When we separate the two, so one person is not responsible for the entire customer service, the entire collections area, and billing on top of it, we separate those two, so there's somebody handling the day-to-day responsibilities of the customer service, collections, and liens process, and somebody handling the day-to-day responsibilities of the billing process. Should give us a unique opportunity to be able to jumpstart and get that program on the ground running. It's still going to take time, but it should shorten the amount of time that's necessary.
Haven't we been collecting? I mean, we had this conversation a year ago.
We do what we can do.
I mean, the bad debt collections, everything, like, we've had this conversation.
Absolutely, we do an analysis account by account that is completely a manual process. Each month we'll run reports, look up each account, work each account, identify is this an account that is an owner's account, and manually we're filing liens on that. We do not are not at the point where we have an automated process that will identify those accounts, separate those accounts into owner and collections accounts, and spit out liens that can then be filed. We are doing it for liens, but it's a manual process. The collections side of the house, we are doing what we can for collections, particularly garbage accounts and those accounts that are larger balances. We're making in-house attempts to collect those. And we're pretty successful with the garbage accounts especially. The number of accounts are dramatically lower than have historically been the case. But it's completely a manual process, and there is no threat at this point of collections, that a collections agency with a ding on an individual's credit record that would give us that extra oomph for those collection efforts.
So you're saying a utility billing clerk cannot do this function? We need to hire a specialist at a higher rate?
A utility billing clerk can do some of these functions. There's not a question of that. What I can't do is get the functions separated with the utility billing clerk. They've got to have some direction, some supervisor, and that separation is what allows us to focus our efforts on areas individually rather than one person being responsible for the entire thing. That separation is what will allow us to devote those efforts to customer service as well as collections and implement those enhancements.
I don't know. I agree.
So, Kevin, there's a plan here. So if we don't approve this, what's going to happen?
We will have to go back to the drawing board and look and see what options we can implement. I'm certainly not saying that it coming back in October is not an option, or not in October, at mid-year is not an option. But right now, we would not be able to wait until mid-year to implement that. We're a staff person short. We had one staff person leave. The part-time position has taken that full-time position, so that part-time position that we had originally requested to go full-time is sitting there vacant. So we would likely need to fill that position one way or the other. So if we're not moving forward with this, we'd have to reevaluate and likely would fill that position, which could well mean that opportunity's lost. Certainly there is when we interviewed for the supervisor position to start with, there's a particular candidate who brings with them significant team lead experience, both lien and collections processing, would be an ideal fit for that position, but they're not going to sit there for 6 months waiting for a position either. So it doesn't mean it's the end of the world, it just means we'd have to reevaluate.
Well, and whichever way this council votes, it sounds like we've established a new priority tonight to get some of these accounts that are in arrears settled up. So,
Well, I was under the impression we've been doing that, so.
You come with a policy sooner than later about best practices.
we can get that established.
Did we advertise for this position?
It is a non-bargaining unit position, so the advertising requirement typically, and you have to let Trudy confirm for me, but the advertising requirement typically applies to bargaining unit positions.
But it's not an internal hire.
No.
I think you can feel the energy from the council, at least when it comes to personnel and reorganizations, that this all be addressed when we have our budget meetings.
Absolutely.
So,
And again, I apologize that we did not have that information. It just kind of came together over the last several weeks.
I can't make a motion, but I'd sure entertain one.
Well, can I ask one more question then? Kevin, the new plan that we're talking about with this new person, eventually you think it would save us money?
It depends on how you view saving money. Where you will have savings is that you don't have expenses related to writing off debt. Each one of those debts, whether we do it as part of a bad debt allowance, or it's later when we determine that this bill is not going to get paid, is an expense which goes against your revenues. Excuse me. And so if you can reduce those parts that become a bad debt, you don't really save anything, but you have less expense. It's not like you reduced your cost for a copier or something like that. You didn't increase your revenues, but you reduced the amount of bad debt in the future. There's absolutely no question if we can improve our process, that increase the amount of liens that are filed, so that we aren't losing that money, and reduce the amount of accounts that go to collections for tenants. Absolutely, that's good for the bottom line. That reduces your expenses, but it's not really a savings of something you would have paid. It's a lost revenue you're not going to get.
I thought about this long and hard the other day, especially, and I don't like taking away tools or not letting somebody get the tools they need to do the job. But we're in the middle of getting a new city manager. And I don't know that we should do a reorganization before he or she comes on board. I don't know.
well, let me piggyback on that, Councilman. I was thinking similar, but mine was also before we put in policies and procedures in place.
Well, yeah.
So to me, if we go down this path of reclassifying this utility billing clerk into that, we need to have them already have their policies and procedures of what we want to hold them accountable to. So to your point, and just piggybacking on that, it seems like this little cart in front of the horse. So I'll go ahead and, let's see if I can make an effort at this. I'll make a resolution, approve for resolution 1827 of the fiscal year budget minus the reclassification of the utility billing clerk position. And then I would direct that we reassess that after we have policy assessment and come back to that mid-year. I know I probably didn't read that exactly right, Scott, but...
Sounds good.
So, there you go. Start the conversation.
Anyone in a second that?
Ralph did.
Ralph's done.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can hear you, Ron.
I didn't hear you there. Well,
Sorry.
Les is having a hard time getting seconds still.
Yeah, it's me, I know it is.
I just want to make sure that I did the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak for or against 18-27 now that we bantered it around for a while. All right, seeing and hearing none, we've got a motion with an amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Does this require a roll call, Debbie?
That's correct.
There we go. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Councilwoman Long.
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Neill.
Aye.
Councilman Shonner.
Here.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
I think I'm here. And that is the last roll call, so in that.
I don't know, yes is aye.
Ordinance 18-12, Scott, if you would, please.
Ordinance number 18-12 by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City Council, City of South Daytona, Florida, amending section 8.5-61, imposition, adopting new fire impact fees, providing for severability, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
Need a motion, please.
Move for approval?
Second?
And again, this is a public hearing. If anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against ordinance 18-12, now's your opportunity to come up. Seeing and hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Mr. Gillis.
Essentially, what you're doing with this ordinance is we're amending our fire impact fees. We had an assisted living facility want to come in on Opportunity Court, south end of the city, on US 1 there. When we were figuring the development fees for that project, they were high by almost a factor of 2 compared to other cities. We then looked into our impact fees, particularly our fire fee, which we determined to be high. John Dillard, our Community Development Director, and our Dave Giles, our Fire Chief, got together and were the reason it was so high. In years past, if someone from an ALF called for, had a patient that had to go to the hospital, they would call and there'd be EVAC and our fire department respond to the ALF to take this patient to the hospital. Now what they do is when they have a patient that needs to go to the hospital, they'll call a non-emergency number or tell the dispatch that they don't need South Daytona to respond. It's not an emergency response. And so EVAC will just show up. So it saves us that call. So the number of calls we get to ALFs has been reduced. Just to give you an idea of where, if this same ALF went into Daytona Beach, the development fees would be about $45,000, Holly Hill $54,000, South Daytona would have been $133,000, and majority of that is the fire impact fee. With this amendment tonight, it'll put us around $37,000. We won't be the lowest. Ormond Beach would be the lowest at $17,000, but we're in the middle for the cities in our area. Staff is obviously recommending approval.
Go ahead, Ron.
I was going to say, I'm glad to hear the comparison numbers from the other cities, because we didn't have that before. When we were going from 1278 to 206, I was wondering, what are we doing?
It's all based on the way a call was handled in the past. They had 2 responses, now they only have 1, with us not responding to a routine call.
Is that, no pun intended, but is that opportunity at Opportunity Court still there?
Yes, although I don't believe we've heard from the developer since we lowered the impact fees, but it's still there.
John Dillard, Community Development Director. That was one that was, it's a relatively small bed. I think there's 16 beds there, about 9,500 square feet. Reason we found out about it initially was one of the developers here in town was the one that was coming forward. Sabunji was coming forward. He was actually the contractor on it, and requested that I work up an impact fee number. And I think the impacts for the fire portion of it only were over $120,000, which was way out there. And that started the whole process. And we did use the same equation which wasn't used in the 2004 study. It's just like Les was saying, that the numbers had changed so much in our response to it. And there was another funny thing about it. It was the more fire calls you had, it was kind of a savings in numbers. So we only had 900 and some calls in 2004, and we're up to almost 3,000, so that also brought some savings in. So it worked out well, and I think that they were pleased with our efforts to try and bring this down. Now, we still have an advertisement period and stuff, so it won't be, won't happen immediately, but it happens within the time frame that he was looking for to move forward. I think it'll be probably the first next year before they break ground on it.
Cool.
Thank you.
I believe I did public hearing on this one already, so all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 18-13, if you would, Scott.
Ordinance number 18-13 by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City of South Daytona, Volusia County, Florida, adopting updates and modifications to the capital improvement element of the South Daytona Comprehensive Plan, providing for repeal of all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
I need a motion, please.
Move to approve?
Second.
This also is a public hearing. If anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against ordinance 18-13, now is your opportunity. Seeing and hearing none, I'll bring it back to Mr. Gillis.
All right, what you're essentially doing here is the city is applying for a FERDAP grant for James Street, through James Park improvements, and that's a Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. In that grant, we get additional points if the project is identified in a document, something like our comp plan. So we are updating our comprehensive plan to put this project in, and all of our current projects that you see listed, those are all currently on our CIP list. So you're just updating the comp plan section to reflect what we have for capital improvements.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Ordinance 18-14, Scott, if you would, please.
Ordinance number 18-14 by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City Council, City of South Daytona, Florida, amending Section 18-1 E7, traffic control devices to allow on-street parking under certain circumstances, providing for severability, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
Need a motion, please.
Move to approve?
Second. This also is a public hearing. If anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against ordinance 18-14, now's your opportunity to come forward. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to Mr. Gillis.
All right, we were so excited about allowing on-street parking at the mayor's request that we didn't distinguish between paved car parking on a paved roadway and one that's in unpaved area or your parkage, what we call your parkage in your right-of-way. You're already allowed to park in your parkage per code, so we want to make that distinction, and that's what you're doing here with this ordinance. You're saying you're not allowed to park on those streets on the paved roadway, but you are allowed to park in the unpaved section or your parkage.
The only change is going from right-of-way to paved street. That's it.
And you answered my question, Scott, about the public utility vehicles. So.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Brings us to new business. Scott, or Mr. Gillis, I'll let you explain A.
All right, what we have here is we had one of our council members, well, actually, let me back up. We're in the process of seeking a new city manager after the first of the year. There was a recruitment schedule that was adopted. One of our council members could not make it during the previously scheduled interview period. They had a scheduling conflict. So this new recruitment schedule sets the interview dates from November 14th through the 16th to November 28th through November 30th. All the council members can make those interview dates, and that's simply what you're doing. You're modifying the recruitment schedule to change the interview dates.
Basically, as I see it, the interview dates then would go from before Thanksgiving to after Thanksgiving.
That is correct. Instead of, I think before, the other change I think I saw was making, or the new city manager starting January 2nd. Now it's listed as to be decided.
We don't need a, I guess we need a motion on this, right?
That's
All right.
correct.
All in favor? Or I need a motion, I'm sorry.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any other comments?
Let's not change it again.
I'm with
Is that a
you.
request or a statement?
That's a request.
Yeah,
Please.
I'll write that down.
I had to hear that.
Okay, not change. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Scott, if you would, Resolution 18-22, please.
Resolution number 18-22 by title only for first and only reading. Resolution of the City of South Daytona, Florida, ratifying the Eastern Volusia Regional Water Authority 2018-2019 budget and providing an effective date.
I need a motion, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Gillis?
All right. When the Water Alliance of Volusia County, or WAVE, disbanded, the cities of Daytona, Holly Hill, and South Daytona formed the Eastern Volusia Regional Water Authority. Each year, this council must adopt a budget for this authority. The budget as presented is minimal. There's no fiscal note to the city, in that the reserves we have with this water authority cover the next year's expense. And, staff's recommending the approval of this budget. And the other cities, Holly Hill and Daytona Beach, it's going before their councils as well, same time frame.
Basically, I'm showing a zero budget,
That's correct.
or zero contribution.
That's correct. No fiscal note to any of the cities.
And speak, since I've been on the oversight for years on this, there really is, unless you've been very involved with it in various roles, this really is just when we want to go put in for some kind of joint grant or some kind of joint project that says we have some need, like a Nova drainage or something like that.
That's correct. There's two mechanisms. That's certainly the most important one. The second is just to keep that line of communication open between our other two cities with projects we have upcoming, any changes to, of course, we receive our water from Daytona and we send them our sewer for treatment. So just maintaining that relationship with these other cities that we're dependent on.
It's not an overly active activity at this point. I think I've been on it for maybe 6 or 8 years. I think we did some things with some Nova drainage canals a few years ago.
I could talk to you about swapping first step.
No, I'm good. I think my term is 10 years, and I'll let you know about 12.
Our 5-minute meetings
If
are
you'd like
something
to
to
get
behold.
busy, I can help you with that. All in favor?
Aye.
Consideration of reappointing one full member to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Mr. Gillis.
Yes, we have a Board of Adjustment and Appeals. This is the board that requires discipline-specific members. We need an architect, engineer, 2 general contractors, and a member of the public. This would be a reappointment of Larry Robinson, something that the mayor pointed out before the meeting, that Larry has been on this board for 25 years. Wanted to make that known. It's just a volunteer board. He wants to continue. Staff is recommending that he continue, and it's filling a need that we have for an architect's position. And he lives in town.
Need a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Second.
I heard 2 of you, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Gillis, the next one, please.
All right, this is our Parks and Recreation Board. There's a reappointment for a position, and the current member is Frederick Emmerich. He is seeking to be reappointed for another 3-year term. Mr. Emmerich, I spoke to our Greg Bartholomew, our Parks and Rec Director. He's very active in our parks programs, and I even noted, why do you desire to serve on a board? And he said, to keep Greg informed. So,
Eyes and ears, right there.
yeah, He does live in the city, and staff is recommending the reappointment of Mr. Emrich.
I need a motion, please.
Motion for approval.
Second?
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Gillis, I'll let you take special use permit.
All right, the last two are special exception requests. The first one is to allow a church function at 661 Bevel Road, Suite 201 to 205. This is the complex that has the casket store in it. I'm sure you are familiar. It's a plaza. The zoning allows it as a special use, which is why it's here before you. They're proposing to hold church on Sundays like any other church would. They meet all the requirements. The parking, the minister there said that he expects around 50 people. This would equate to 10 parking spaces that are required. Whenever we propose these projects, parking's always a concern, so we'll keep that monitored if you decide to go forward with it. If it's approved, the facility still has to be inspected by the city fire inspector prior to issuing a business tax receipt. And the special exception passed the LDRB on September 19, 2018, and staff is recommending its approval.
I need a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Second?
Any other comment?
I just had a question, because it involved this one in the next issue, and being on this council for a while now, and we have a few of these special exceptions. How many of these do we have in regards to places of worship? Do we have an idea? And then I guess what I feel is, I wish them nothing but the best and that they have long tenure, but a lot of these probably don't stay around. So I feel like we as council know we approve these, but then we don't know if they ever, kind of.
Well, I know we also run into issues with parking on a lot of these, so,
Yeah.
But go ahead, John. Sorry.
John Diller, Community Development
I guess
Director.
we know where the spirit of kind of my question is going.
Yes, well, it's kind of an interesting thing, and you're absolutely right. We do get quite a few of these, but quite a few of them last 3, 4, 6 months, and then they're gone. So I would say the total number right now, I could get you that number, I'm not sure what it is. We've talked about, because of the number that come in,
Correct.
we've talked about doing the same type of thing we do with other businesses, that we don't want to have too many concentrations on them, do setbacks or distances between them and stuff like that. But it's never really become an issue.
Well, there's
They seem-
also the federal law that
Yeah.
really restricts what we can do with churches.
That's
Oh, absolutely.
correct.
And,
Yeah.
and again, I'm asking this question not really even in the spirit of that this would sway my vote one way or the other, just simply as a curiosity factor. So if you,
Yes.
I'd be curious on how many.
And I can get you the number, but you'd be, we don't bring them to you when they close. You'd be surprised with the length of them and how they come and go, so.
Very good, thank you.
Right, sure.
It's a shame that any of them close. Use a little more.
Absolutely.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, last one.
All right, last one. Again, this is a church, and it's literally right up the road. It's it's more east of the last project, closer to the railroad tracks. This is the plaza that has the Western Southern Life Insurance in it. Familiar with that? Again, they're proposing to have church services and study classes on Sundays only. The zoning allows it as a special use. It meets all the requirements. The parking, I know that's always a concern. They're required to have 19 spaces, and that's based off of their square footage. There's plenty of parking in that plaza on Sundays, as most of the businesses won't be open. Again, if it's approved, the facility will have to be inspected by the fire inspector for compliance with code prior to business tax receipt being issued. This special use went before the Land Development Board on September 19th and passed unanimously, and staff is recommending its approval.
Need a motion, please.
Move to approve?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just a question. In the past, when we've had parking issues, and a couple of them on Ridgewood and what have you, has it been easily worked out? Just curiosity question.
Yeah, John Diller, Community Development Director. Yes. This one was kind of interesting, and I don't know if it was in the memo or not, should have been. The pastor had worked out a deal with the property manager where he will be parking in the back, which is basically an unused parking area. And there's a walk-through between this property and C's Waffles that allows them to come from the back parking lot to the front of the building. So they require them to park in the back, plus it being on a Sunday when there's minimal number of parking spaces in use. So we're hoping that will eliminate any problems.
Right, and we've talked to the ones that have been a problem, you know, and talking with them, they've either closed down or moved to a different location. They realize they're...
That's what I was getting. I hadn't heard any more about those other instances. But
Yes, they've moved, yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, this portion of the agenda for council member comments. Vice Mayor, we'll start with you.
A couple. One is glad to see Kevin out there. I got to view the soccer game. Of course, my boys were in the band that got to perform, but Kevin failed to mention, I think it was his daughter that sang the national anthem for that activity. So he was nervous on two fronts, I think, trying to make it through the whole game without getting hurt and all that stuff. So that was wonderful to see. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, was the League of Cities committee meetings. The only thing I wanted to share was kind of an interesting thing that I wasn't aware of. Sitting on the one committee, Finance, Taxation, and Personnel, an issue came up that we didn't really get a lot of traction, but it was one of those aha moments. Employment discrimination of elected officials. So currently there are 17, I think it was 17 states that have an ordinance that an employer cannot fire you for running for office or holding office. And it's kind of a high-profile situation. Florida is not one of those. And so there was a person on the committee, a council woman from down South Florida, and she was terminated because she refused to resign from her position with the bank. So there was something there about this idea. Now, being an HR professional, I kind of understand if we all said that we're going to go run for office in Tallahassee and be gone 27 weeks, I understand why your employer would have issues with that. But I think the idea of employment discrimination for local elected officials is something that got a little traction there. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So there you go. That's all I got.
And I just want to say that the city's looking a lot brighter with those new light bulbs.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's great.
That's a great partnership with the city and FPL on
And it
that.
saves energy
Absolutely.
eventually.
I'm not sure we'd say that.
Ms. O'Neill?
I talked too much. No additional comments.
I just want to say thanks to our volunteers, especially these two gentlemen who've been there for a long time. Thank you very much.
Actually, I have a couple of things. One, for those of you that made it to the Kalen Cordier ride, we had a high turnout for the first time in years. Doug, it was quite an event in Kalen's name. The Lions Club raised a few dollars, and Citizens Alert raised a few dollars, and a good time was had by all. It was not cold, not hot, not rainy. So I guess that's three good things for a Florida outside event. Chief, Kevin left before I could tell him, but that was the reason why I didn't make it to that event. But I think it's pretty cool. We need to find a prominent place to put that trophy. It's something to be proud of. For those of you that didn't get the email, I got an email late this afternoon that Larry Vonnick with FT&L is retiring.
Oh, really?
He sent it to myself and Mr. Yarborough. I read the email before I got here. His wife has sold her veterinarian business, and they are going to start the next chapter of their life with outdoor travel. So he will be retiring here, based on the email that I got, very shortly.
Nice.
He said 30-some years with FP&L, I think, if I recall it correctly. Steve Freisen. For those of you that remember him, recall him, Steve passed. He was here when I got to the city. I believe, if my memory serves me right, he was a longtime staple of Public Works.
Absolutely. An anchor.
I
there.
know that his retirement was difficult, but now that he's not around, where you can pick up the phone and call him and say, hey, Steve, what is this? It's going to be more difficult. So if y'all would keep Mr. Freisen's family in your thoughts and prayers as we go through arrangements haven't been announced yet, is that right?
That's correct. It'll be Saturday at 2, but we do not know the church location yet. But once we do, we'll let all the employees know, and certainly let you guys know. Steve was a great guy, totally selfless, what you'd want a public servant to be. And like you said, we relied on his information, I want to say, a couple times a month on...
After he retired.
That's just after he retired, and more than willing to give it sometimes in the grocery aisle at Publix. Just a great guy, and he will be missed. So.
We have a ribbon cutting at 4 on Saturday.
Correct. That Kenneth Grant Inspirations. If you're looking at Sunshine Park Mall, it's on the left side. There's some doors on the south side of the building.
Andy, I neglected to mention the CERT involvement with the Kalen ride. I noticed quite a few Jeeps with CERT decals and stickers and a Chase trailer. Thank you very much for your time and efforts. And for those of you that want some good food and see some nice Jeeps, we have a Jeep and Eats Thursday evening from 5 to 8 at the Sunshine Park Mall. There'll be several food trucks and some underpriced Jeeps that'll be out there for people to view. And a DJ.
That's right.
Awesome. And on that, that's all I have. Meeting adjourned.